And without further ado, I will introduce David Smith. He is the former director of Startup Grind, and he's the one who started it in 2015. And then he got a job out of Lansing and said to me, "Hey, Phil, you want to take this over?" And I'm like, "Huh, I didn't really think about that. I just like coming to your events." And he's like, "Well, give it some thought." And like I thought about it for like 2 days, and then I was like, "All right, sure, yeah, let's hook me up." So we talked to the global headquarters, and they said, "Yeah, let's transfer the directorship over to me." And I've been doing it since March 2017. So I said a few months ago, I'm like, "Hey, Dave, we need to bring you back. You did Startup Grind, but there's no reason you can't be the person that's being interviewed." So I finally talked him into it, and he's here tonight. So can everyone please give a round of applause for David Smith? All right, we're just going to do a mic check. Can everyone hear David?
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me now?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Closer. How about now? That feels good, huh? Thanks for coming out, everyone.
All right, so I guess we'll get right into it. Actually, I'll give you a little background first. Dave, I've known Dave for a long time before he even did Startup Grind, and just coming to these different entrepreneurial events around town. You can see him at they used to have something called Ignite Lansing or Demo Camp, which is in like a month from now. You guys should check that out. And I just see him at these events, and hey, who is this guy? David Smith. Oh, hey, how's it going? So he was into tech and programming and all that stuff. So we started talking, and I didn't talk to him for a while, and then at some point, probably say 2012, he's like, "Yeah, I got into Bitcoin." And I'm like, "What's Bitcoin?" So he educated me, and I didn't talk to him about it like real in depth for a little while, and I should have right at the beginning, because that's when the price was low, and now the price is much higher. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about tonight. But he's also done a lot of great things for just the startup community in the Lansing area, so we'll be talking about that too. So how about how you got started? I know one thing maybe you want to mention is like your dad's business, and that must have been an influence on where you went and how your career developed. But how did you get into tech? Maybe is the first question for you.
Cool. Well, before we get into tech, you talked about how you met me.
Yeah.
My first memory of you, it was a Saturday night. I was nerding out on my computer instead of hanging out with my friends. And Phil posted, I think it was at Kalamazoo Startup Weekend. And at these events, you pitch on Friday night, you put together a team, and he'd actually built a product and was looking for people to test it out on Saturday. And I was like, holy cow, who's this guy? Let me check out his product. On a Saturday night, I think we messaged back and forth, and that's my first memory of you, because I just thought like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
So how did I get into tech?
Yeah.
It started when I was a kid. I was in the 6th grade, and my dad bought our family a computer, and he bought this computer. I was so excited to have this computer. We got the computer for some reason. It didn't have a monitor yet, and so I would turn this thing on, and it was back in Windows 3.1, which some people in the audience might not remember, but this thing would make like a little like noise when it started up. So I would turn this thing on without a monitor just to hear that noise through the speakers. So I just couldn't wait to get my hands on this thing. I was like, "Dad, when is that monitor coming?" And we got that monitor, and I had the computer. And if I wasn't playing video games with friends, I was coding on this thing. I loved, I don't know, maybe almost like puzzles, solving these problems on the computer, being able to create, to build. Some people like to do art, and it makes them feel good, makes you feel like a creator. And I just felt so great as a little, 6th grader, 7th grader, being able to type in some code and have a program do something that I wanted, or to I have a web page that my family could look at, and so that was how I got into tech.
Okay, and of course you weren't getting paid for that sort of thing, so when did it turn into something you were like actually like building a career towards?
I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and that was one of my big mistakes. So back in 1990, maybe 3 or 4 or something like that, I started coding. I was doing web pages and doing programming, and like you said, just for fun. And so was the kid down the street. He was saying, "Dave, we should do a business." I said, "Nobody's going to hire a couple of high school kids." This was back in like 1996, 1999, 2000. People would have threw so much money at us. I wouldn't have had to invest in Bitcoin. I wouldn't have had to take a risk there. People today equate the crypto, the huge rise in crypto and all the fanaticism there to back what was happening in the tech bubble. And I was right there. And if I listened to my neighbor, I probably would have had a thriving business or at least made a bunch of money back then. So that was my first mistake, not getting paid. The really other cool thing that I didn't realize at the time, it's one thing to do something as a hobby, but when I do something as a hobby, if it gets hard, I might just move on to something else. But if somebody is paying me to do a job for them, I need to get that done. And it doesn't matter if I'm supposed to play with my friends or whatever. I have a duty to that person to get that done, and that's going to make me like push through when it gets really hard. And I'm going to learn a lot doing that and be better in the future. And that was something I didn't realize. So I think that would have made me a much more accomplished programmer if I would have started getting paid for what I was doing back then instead of just doing it as a hobby.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe how about your education? When you got out of high school, what did you do?
Yeah, when I left high school, I was super excited. I don't know if you guys remember like the senior year of high school, but my memory is sitting in physics class with my best friend Nathan and just talking about next year we're not going to be in our parents' house anymore. We're going to be on our own, masters of our own destiny. And so I was really excited. Got accepted at MSU and went there and had a nice, fantastic freshman year and graduated. So that was good.
What did you study? Did you learn anything?
Did I learn anything? I think I learned a lot. I think it's hard for me to say how MSU changed me as a person. Initially, I went in for computer science because when I was in high school, I just loved computers and loved programming. And when I went to Michigan State, I had problems getting homework done. And the computer science program here, there's a lot of homework. And so the first couple assignments I did really well. Maybe I was like leading the curve or something for the class, but that really tapered off. And then I ended up actually failing my computer science class for sophomore year, I think it was. And then I ended up switching over to telecommunications, which had more of a business focus. And this was back in like 2002. Maybe 7 years later, I was working at a company, and I saw that I thought very differently about what my role was as an employee of the company. And I didn't feel like I was there to solve coding problems. I felt like I was there to help the business. And it seemed like a lot of my colleagues who had computer science degrees, they were really focused on solving the computer problems, and I felt like I was more focused on the business. And I wonder if it's because I was in this telecom program that had us doing business plans and things like that, and maybe unbeknownst to me, that was like the best thing that ever happened to me.
Interesting. Okay, so after you graduated from state, what did you do right after you graduated?
So when I was at state, I worked for the state of Michigan as an intern. I was doing tech support, and then eventually got to be able to do programming for them. And it was really cool. Programming for hobbies is one thing, but one of the projects that I got to work on there was their oil and gas auction program. So the state of Michigan, they have, I'm going to forget the details, but essentially they have rights over the oil and gas here in Michigan, and they would auction that off twice a year, I think it was. And so this program is actually handling, I think it was about $4 to $6 million in sales every 6 months or something like that, maybe forgetting the details. And that just made me feel really great to be able to help out and make some changes in this program that these people, nobody had been supporting this thing for, 5 years or something like that. And so that was really awesome for me to be able to help them out in that way. And it felt really good to be part of something that I felt was important.
Cool. Okay, so how long did you work at the state?
I ended up leaving the state in November 2007, and I went to a company in Detroit called Urban Science. When I was at the state of Michigan, I really enjoyed it there. You know, I worked with really great people. They let me do a lot. I worked a lot. I'd be there on the weekends sometimes. I'd go around the holidays. I had 24/7 access. I loved it. My boss was cool. You know, sometimes I might go hang out with like friends for a happy hour or something, and then go into the office like at 11 or something at night. And he would be there, and we'd chat about work. And they, you know, really let me blossom. I got to do some project management, so I had a really great time there. One of the things I was a little bit frustrated with was I wanted to move a little bit faster. You know, things at the state sometimes didn't move as fast as I wanted to. And there was a particular technology that I was really interested in. And my boss, John Carey, he had advised me to be on the run for the board at the .NET user group. I can't remember what year it was, but it's a long story now. that led to me really branching out and learning from books and from networking and from other people. Like if he hadn't have pushed me to be part of that group, I probably would have just been, you know, one of those computer nerds like in the basement who doesn't interact with people. But since he pushed me there, you know, then I started getting involved in boards, started going to these conferences, and that led me to my job in Detroit. You know, somebody said the technology I was interested in at the time, in 2007, was WPF. And somebody at one of these conferences said, "Hey, we're hiring for WPF developers. Let me know if you want to work here." I put up both hands. I was so excited. I put up both hands, and I'm glad somebody likes my jokes. But he knows me, so maybe it's inside.
It was a good joke.
Thank you. So I put up both hands, and then afterwards we chatted, and then I ended up interviewing there, and I think that it was fast. I was down there in a few weeks. They're excited to have somebody who's, you know, nerdy and really wants to learn cutting edge technologies.
So what did Urban Science do? What was their business?
They're in the auto industry. So I worked in the Rensen, which is actually funny. Brian McGreen, I think, who's in the audience over here. A year before that, we were in the Renaissance Center at a birthday party, and man, this building just seemed so huge and so massive. And I think in my head, I was thinking like, man, it'd be insane to work in a place like this. Never thought like a year later I would be in this, you know, just massive building in the heart of Detroit. So that's pretty cool. But Urban Science, they have 3 practices. So they're in the auto industry. So they helped at the network level. They helped the you know, companies like GM, you know, figure out their markets. They might look at Lansing and say how many, you know, dealerships should we have a few years from now. And then they had a site practice. So they might look at an individual dealership here in Lansing and say, you know, that dealership had, let's make up a number, 1,000 sales last month. Is that a good number or a bad number? And then at the customer level, you know, if somebody's buying a car, they're saying how much, how do we really help that customer like maximize that experience? And when I was there, I was working initially at they called it the network level. So that was like for GM and analyzing geographic areas and saying how many dealerships should we have there. So it was like mapping software, kind of like a Google Maps, but not as cool. It was like 12 years ago, a long time ago. So it was a little bit harder. And then after that, then I was working at the dealership level. So if you said you wanted to buy a car and you put in your information, then that would go through our software, and we try to find out how much money you make and if you're married and all these things to really get that sale.
All right. So what did you do after Urban Science?
After Urban Science, I went to a company in Chicago called Sonoma Partners. Really amazing experience for me. You know, it's one of those companies that you kind of read about, like in Silicon Valley, where they have snacks and all kinds of crazy perks for the employees. I'm not a sports person, and so it's kind of unfortunate. But one of our clients was the I don't know, whoever runs the place where the hockey teams play for the Stanley Cup in Chicago.
Blackhawks?
The Blackhawks, yeah, the United Center maybe? I don't know.
United Center.
Okay, it's the United Center. So they were one of our clients. So the Blackhawks were in the Stanley Cup, and they're like, "Hey, you guys, we're gonna get a box. You guys can all come if you want." So I got to go go see that. But it's a little bit unfortunate because I just kind of like checked it off. But some people who are really like sports people, that would have been like a real lifetime memory for them. But that shows what kind of company it was. And they were always taking us to cool stuff like that. So that was like a surprise one, but they always had like bar nights scheduled and cool stuff. And the other interesting thing about that company was they just focused on one thing. They just did Microsoft Dynamics CRM. And so when I was interviewing there, I was like, man, they're hanging their hat on this one thing. If this thing goes away, they're done. And I thought they needed to diversify so they'd have multiple business lines, in case that went away. But the cool thing was when I was there, that made them the best in the world at what they did. We were competing with companies that were 20 times our size and just destroying them. And the company was profitable and it was low stress. I don't know how many people here are in tech, but before that, tech projects are always like stressful, and you're working weekends, and you're working nights, and you're always worried about hitting these deadlines, and it's really tough. And at Stone Partners, everything was easy. Everything was on time, on budget, 40-hour work weeks. They actually fired clients that would get us requests late and have tight deadlines, which I've seen companies talk about doing that, but I've never seen that happen. And it was a really amazing experience for me. It was also surprising too, because on the downside, it felt kind of weird. Like I really thrived on my career back then, and that was a real big part of me. And it felt almost like I wasn't needed. Like I was just like this cog in the machine. And if I got hit by a bus, although somebody told me instead of saying hit by a bus, you should say won the lottery, and didn't come into work the next day, it wouldn't have impacted the company. Whereas before, I felt like, oh man, my contributions here are so important, and it would be hard to replace me. But there, it was smooth sailing, and I took that with me going forward, and thinking how do we create this environment that's low stress, great for our clients, great for our employees, where people can have a work-life balance and have success.
Cool. So it sounds like a great place to work. So why or where to go to next?
Yeah. So it was a great place to work, but not so much for me. I was really wanting more challenge and wanting to work was a big part of my identity. And there, it was interesting too, because I worked with super smart people. They recruited really smart people, but we worked on really easy stuff, and everything had been done before too. So if we got a new requirement that we hadn't seen before, we would just put out on a Twitter type company thing, and somebody would say, oh, here's how you do it. So there were probably only 4 interesting things that I worked on in the 9 months that I was there. And so I left. One of my friends had started a consultancy back here in Lansing, and I had an opportunity to, he took a risk on me. I'd been doing coding and project management and things like that, and I was interested in sales, and he wanted me to come work for him. I've got a 10-year-old son, and so it was a good opportunity for me to come back to Lansing and have more family time and help, at a consultancy. I think I was the 5th or 6th hire, and do my programming and explore the sales world. And so I came back to Lansing.
Cool. And so how did that go?
That was really cool. The first year was so tough. Oh my gosh, it was so tough. Before that, before being in sales myself, I was a programmer, and I thought, man, these salespeople, they don't do anything. They just go and play golf, and we don't need them. If you build it, they will come. I had all these kind of ideas, and when I started that company, I was like, man, sales is tough. And the other problem too is I was trying to code 60 hours a week for client projects, and then trying to go to networking events and all kinds of stuff for another 20 hours a week, and it was killing me. It was killing me. I remember I started in September, and in December I was just wiped out like I'd never been in my life, and I really had to do a reset, that next year, and just be I just can't do that much. I just need to calm it down. I read a lot of books, and in addition to working, all these crazy hours and never sleeping, and all the pressure delivered for clients, and the next year was a lot better in sales. Year 2 was really a lot better for me. I felt more comfortable in this role, and At the time, I just felt like things were hard, and I think I focused on a lot of the negatives. And then later, a couple of years later, I thought about like all the good things that happened and how hard it was for the owners. I wasn't an owner, and so I've written some thank you notes, and when I see my former employer, I tell them like, oh, this was cool, and I don't know how you did that, and I don't know how you were handling the stress. But at the time, I didn't appreciate that, and I feel like kind of a jerk for that, because I didn't appreciate how hard it was on them when I thought it was so hard on me.
Yeah. So what did you do after that?
After that, in 2012, I think it was on my birthday actually, I think it was September 24th, 2012, I decided to start my own company. And I wanted to base it on the company I was in Chicago, where I just wanted to focus on one thing and just do that really well, to have a company that did well for our clients and for our employees.
Okay.
So I was focused on mobile development then.
And did you get a lot of clients? Did you grow? Did you find problems and have to quit? How did it all go?
It went well in some respects and not so well in other respects. So like financially it was pretty good. We landed a big client, Jackson National Life here in town. Leo Dion's in the audience back there. Yep. So Leo and I worked on this project, and we did a great job on this project. The client was really happy. It was on time, on budget, on schedule, all that stuff, and they kept renewing the project, and that was really cool. Another guy in the audience, Brian McGrain, who I already mentioned, he gave me this book when I started called 4-Hour Workweek, and that book really influenced how I approached that business. I was going to spend a ton of money. I was going to spend tens of thousands of dollars, maybe like $60,000 to build out a software product. And in my mind, I knew like, hey, if this thing doesn't work, like that's a lot of money that might just be flushed down the drain. But that book, 4-Hour Workweek, although it was not about building consultancies, it talked about ways to reduce risk. And so instead of spending this bunch of money, I was like, what if I just use another product, and then if that's successful and the revenue is there, then I can go and build this product and have higher margins. But then I'm not taking on that risk of this huge upfront spend. And I don't know what would happen if we went down another path. Because we pivoted from this product company into this consultancy. And so it was good from a financial perspective. I wasn't in love with the business though. I really wasn't. I knew I was there just waiting for something else. And I spent a lot of time with my son, that year, which was nice. And I started the company in 2012, September, and in 2013, that was when I started investing in Bitcoin. And I really fell in love with Bitcoin. I fell hard for that Bitcoin. And as soon as I put some money in there, it's almost like that love at first sight. I don't know if you guys have ever met a woman and just been like in love. So Bitcoin wasn't love at first sight, but like love at first investment. As soon as I put that money in there, I just started reading about it, and I was like, man, this is amazing. And I just kind of finish out the contract, and just focus on Bitcoin.
And what was the price when you started?
What was the price? I think I decided to buy it. It's on my calendar because it was a special day for me. I had lunch with my dad and my brother, and my dad had seen Bitcoin in the Wall Street Journal. I forget what country it was, but some country just had a financial crisis. I want to say Cyprus, maybe. And I think they were like pulling money out of people's bank accounts or something. And so Bitcoin went in 2013 at the beginning of the year was like $10 or $15 up to like $270. And my dad was like, "Did you see this?" I was like, I almost fell out of my chair because I'd heard about Bitcoin in December 2011 when it was like $3 or $5 or something like that. And I thought this thing is amazing, and I really want to do something here, but it's one of these things that's like never going to work. And so then I saw it working, a couple years later, and I was like, man, I missed the boat. I missed the boat. I would have loved this thing. I would have made a ton of money, and so then that day I decided I'm going to put some money into this thing. That was in April of 13, I think. But Bitcoin was hard to buy back then. I think it's still kind of hard to buy today. It took me 3 months to get in. So I didn't get in until July of 13, which was actually lucky for me too because the price went from like 270 down to like, I don't know, 70 or 90 or something like that. So I can't remember exactly, but I got in somewhere around 70 or $90 was my first investment instead of the 200. So it was kind of nice.
Always a plus.
Yeah.
So you got in to Bitcoin, and did you just, okay, I'm just gonna sit here and wait for my Bitcoin to make money, or what did you do with it? Like, how did you like pursue it?
No, I didn't at all. I did want to make money on it. So my initial thinking was like, I can't remember the numbers exactly, but I was like, if I can put like a small amount of my net worth, maybe I put like 1 or 3% or something like that of my net worth into this Bitcoin thing, and it's probably gonna fail. I'm probably gonna lose whatever I put in. But if it doesn't, I'm probably gonna like, have a 100x return or higher in the next 5 years. And then I figure out how the math works out, but then my net worth will be substantially higher than it is today. So by risking a small amount, I can have this big outcome. And what's your question?
So, like, what did you do with Bitcoin?
Oh, what did I do?
Forgot about it?
What did I do with it? So that, well, I don't know why I started talking about my thinking around the risk reward, but yeah, initially I got into to make money. But when I started reading about it, I was like, man, I just love this thing. This thing is so cool. So I was even before I was able to buy. Back then they had these faucets where you would like go to a website and it would just send you Bitcoin. So probably at the time I got like, I don't know, half a cent of Bitcoin or something, and I don't know what I did with it, but maybe I just sat and looked at it in my wallet or who knows what. I was looking at like the miners. I was reading the Bitcoin Reddit. I was in love with this thing. And I just couldn't wait to get my hands on it too. I was trying to figure out how to get my hands on it. I'd never been on Reddit before, but I started reading Reddit every day, and it was really cool.
Cool. So you were following it, and so you were in love with it. You knew what was going on, but I imagine there was only so much you could do with it at the time, and so maybe you started doing other things, other businesses that you started, other.
No, Bitcoin. When I got into it, I was like, hey, I thought about it like letters that you mail in the mail. Which I heard that receipt the other day, but Brian, I was at his house the other day. He had some stamps on his table, and I was kidding. I was like, what are those stamps? I don't know if I've ever bought stamps in my life. Maybe one time in the Renaissance Center, I had to mail something, and I had to ask the post office person, I'm like, I don't know how much this costs. Can you just send this thing from here? Because like digital communications are so much better than letters in so many ways. And I saw that same thing with Bitcoin. Like this thing has so many advantages over traditional money. And it's kind of funny. I think you could do more with it back then. There were people experimenting with crazy things back there. There were like stock exchanges where people were like listing their company and you could buy shares. The ICOs today that I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are interested in, you're not actually buying shares in the company there. You're buying these tokens, which is very different from buying shares. But back then, there was at least one place you could buy shares, and maybe two. The U.S. government shut those down, unfortunately. But there was a lot of stuff you could do. There's also a lot of talk about putting data on the blockchain, which people have done since then. But back then, they were just talking about it. Like nobody had done that, and it was new. And people were issuing shares. They had these gambling sites. They had like these provably fair gambling sites. So some people like might not trust these gambling sites on the internet. It's like if I'm running the site, I can just like take your money and make you lose all the time. But with Bitcoin and the blockchain, they could have it provably fair for the first time. So you could be like, oh, here was how they determined the odds. Here was an event they didn't know was going to happen in the future, and then here was how we calculated that. And then you could, after the next Bitcoin block was found, you could go back and reverse their math and say, hey, this site didn't cheat me. So there were lots of cool things back then before I even had any Bitcoin that I was learning about. And then once I got Bitcoin, there was even more things you could do with it. I read about this another gambling site in Canada. I read about it. It was on like a Wednesday morning or something, and I thought, hey, this thing's cool. I want to put a little bit of money in here. So maybe I zipped $300 like over into Canada or something, and like 4 hours later, this Canadian gambling site is like paying me dividends that I can withdraw right now. And that was such a big contrast from the first investment I made, which was in a clothing company here locally, Defy. I had to figure out like how much do I want to put in, and here's this check, and everything's all complicated, and it took weeks and legal paperwork and all that stuff. Versus like, oh, I read about this thing, I'm gonna put money in there. Boom, it's there right now. It's paying me dividends right now. If I want to take it out, it's out right now. If I want to put more in, and I think that really helped me, see the power of this technology.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. So summer 2013, you get into Bitcoin, and fast forward maybe 6 months later, you're talking to me about Bitcoin. Yeah, this Bitcoin, this sounds cool, yeah. So there's another guy in the audience, Eric, standing up over there. I'm like, Eric, Dave keeps talking about this thing, Bitcoin, we got to get into it. So Eric and I, if anyone doesn't know, maybe we should back up and maybe for some of the people just kind of tell them how Bitcoin works. I'll let you do it since you're the local expert on Bitcoin, but just give a brief, 1 minute, this is how Bitcoin works.
Oh man, I'll talk about how Bitcoin's supposed to work. So, when I think about digital currencies, I think it's supposed to be like email to letters. And so when I think about digital currencies and digital assets, I think I want to send to somebody, maybe Tyler back there, and I just get out my phone and I just send him that asset and he receives it, and that's it. And it's fast, instant, and free. That's how I think about it. Today things are like way more complicated. There's a whole bunch of tech and all this complicated math, but I think at a high level, it's just about like uber efficient and person to person.
Yeah, and so how Bitcoin gets made is there are these miners all across the world, and they can use computers, but now they use these specialized computers nowadays called ASICs that just all they know how to do is make Bitcoin. And they solve these algorithms, like every 10 minutes they're solving a different algorithm. And in the algorithm, they also spit out what transactions went across the network. So if Dave sends money to Tyler during that 10 minutes, the guy who solved the math equation, he's not only rewarded Bitcoin, like right now it's 12.5 Bitcoin per block. So every 10 minutes, someone solves this equation, and it's kind of like a lottery. Who's ever ASIC computer is lucky enough to solve it first, gets rewarded this 12.5 Bitcoin, and then sends it out to the network, hey, I solved it, and different nodes around the network say, oh yes, you're right, you beat me to it, you solved it, and so they recognize this guy as solving it. He gets the 12.5 Bitcoin plus fees on all the transactions that went through. So if Dave sends Tyler Bitcoin, maybe it cost him 0.001 Bitcoin to do that, so he might end up getting 12.8 Bitcoin for that block that he solved in that 10-minute period. So we're talking about it with Dave, and I'm like, Eric, let's get a miner, because we can get these miners, and I just turn them on, and they just make Bitcoin all the time. And like at the time, it was maybe in 4 months you were going to get your money back on what you spent on the miner. But it's a little complicated, because if the price goes up, you can get your money back in 1 month. If the price goes down, it's going to take longer or maybe never. And then on top of it, you're always paying for electricity to run these things, because they are electricity hogs. So it was February 2014, Eric and I bought this miner, and even back then, like, you could order these things, but most of them came from China, and we were like, if we wait for it to come from China, it's going to be 2 months before we get it, and we could have been making Bitcoin that time. So we found some guys on Craigslist selling these Bitcoin miners, and they were like near Detroit, so we're like, let's meet in Brighton, and we'll go. And so we do, we're like, are they going to jip us, or are they going to run off with their money or whatever? So I had this envelope with like $1,400 in it, and I'm like, okay, let's go, and we're gonna get this Bitcoin miner. And so I meet him at the Williamston Park and Ride, and I had the money in an envelope. I jumped in his car, and it's like snowing. I mean, it is just like that much snow on the highway, and we get halfway there, and I'm like, oh no, the money is back in my car at the Park and Ride. So we turn around, we pull in. I jump out of his car, and Eric expects me to like boop, boop, open my car door or something, but I don't. I just like open the door, go in. He's like, you never locked your car, did you? And I'm like, no. You left that money just sitting on the seat. Yeah, I guess I forgot that too. So anyways, we went. They didn't, they were reputable guys. They gave us this miner. We ran it, and I think we ran it for maybe 5-6 months, and we made some Bitcoin. And I think at the time we probably had about broken even on our electricity and whatnot. And at some point, probably around June or so, I'm like, Eric, let's shut this down because I'm paying more in electricity per day than we are getting back in Bitcoin. And if we wanted to, we, instead of losing money on electricity, if you really like Bitcoin, let's just buy the Bitcoin. So there was no reason to mine it at that point in time. So I'm going to fast forward about 2 more months, maybe say April or so of 2014. In the first 2 months with Eric and my miner, it had been going pretty well. And I'm like, Dave, it's going pretty well with this miner. We've made some money on it. Do you want to get a miner? And he's like, yeah, sure. Because before he just bought the Bitcoin. And so him and I, we went in on another miner. And we met the same 2 guys, but they gave us a better miner. Didn't use as much electricity. It was a little smaller. It wasn't like a big mammoth thing that Eric and I got. And so Dave and I, we ran that miner, but since Eric and I had a 2-month head start, him and I did a lot better on ours. But the good thing is, since we didn't use as much electricity, Dave's and I, we probably shut it off in September or October, so ours was able to go farther. So we made this, and then we just sort of forgot about it, or at least I did. I know you did, but I was like, okay, well, that electricity went up too high too, so I'm just going to sit here with this Bitcoin and see what happens. So that's kind of the backstory on the mining and everything like that. And then at some point, Bitcoin started going up, and you started getting even more into it, Ethereum and Simple Token and all that. So tell us a bit about that.
Before we do that, I want to talk about the mining thing.
Oh, okay.
So from your perspective, I was never excited about mining. I always thought I'll just buy it. It's kind of complicated, but I just didn't think it was a good investment to do the mining thing. But when you told me you want to do the miner, I was like, hey, I don't know anybody at Lansing who's doing anything with Bitcoin. I talk to people about Bitcoin, and they're all like, stop, please stop. I regret I ever asked you what you're up to. And Phil was into Bitcoin, and so I was like, hey, he wants to do this thing. I'll put some money in there. I was like, hey, worst case scenario, I think it was $500 or something.
Yeah.
It's I'll lose the $500. I'm not gonna notice it. It'll be fine. Best case scenario, Phil and I work together, we figure out something cool, we do a startup, who knows what, maybe we end up being billionaires or something like that. I wasn't really thinking billionaires, but good things can happen when you work with people. And so I was like, hey, the risk here is really low, and the reward is potentially really cool. So I was like, hey, I'll put some money in there. And like you said, I didn't expect that thing to make any money. I was surprised you gave me a call a couple weeks ago and you're like, hey, we made some money on that. It's like, oh, okay, nice. Yeah. But I think that's a good thing to think about. Looking for opportunities to work with people who you like, trying to say yes to things that you're on the fence about. On the flip side, I've also noticed I can get involved in too many things, and then I'm not productive. If I'm working with 10 partners, then I'm dividing my energy among 10 things. I've got all this stuff going on, and that's not really fair to them. And so I think there's a balance there.
Yeah, you got to take every opportunity that comes along with sort of a risk-reward thing and how much effort you're putting into it. Basically, you and I went halves on this miner, we turned it on, and then when it got too expensive to run, we turned it off. It wasn't that hard.
Phil says we. I didn't do anything. I sent him a check and drove him to Brighton, and that was it.
Yeah. Okay, so on to the new technologies, Ethereum, Simple Token, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, you're right. At the time with the mining, I was getting even deeper into Bitcoin. At that point, it was 2014. I'd shut down my company. I had an opportunity in Detroit to write some articles for Benzinga. People were so excited about Bitcoin. It just had this huge run up in 2013 from $15 to $1,200. People had made tons of money. At the end of 2013, they started having the first altcoins. There was one, I was talking to Tyler earlier about Dogecoin. this thing started, I think it was in December. I think I was at a Bitcoin conference in Vegas. This thing started up, from nothing, and then all of a sudden, like a month later, it's got like a $90 million market cap. And today, you might think like, oh, that's nothing, because you look at coin market cap and everything's in the billions. Back then, only Bitcoin was maybe at 1 billion, I think. So $90 million for this thing that just started like a month ago was like unbelievable, and people had just made crazy amounts of money, and so I ended in 2014 thinking like, wow, all this crypto stuff did really well last year. I just want to, and I love it, and I want to focus here, and so I was trying to do software products. In 2013, I did a couple products. I did a software trading thing. It's called arbitrage, but it's kind of complicated, where you buy somewhere when you can sell somewhere else higher. So like if I can buy that red cup for $1 and then sell it to Alex for $2, like, yeah, I want to do that. And especially if I can have software do that for me, that's like fantastic. It's like, oh, buy it for $1, sell for $2, great. So I built software that was doing that, and I built another product called GiveCoin, where you could mail Bitcoin to people. You can actually have like, I'll skip that part. You could mail Bitcoin to people, so it's cool. So I was going to those. I went to a couple Bitcoin conferences at the end of 2013, and I wanted to have something. I wanted to get hired in the industry. I wanted to just work in the industry, have somebody pay me for the stuff that I was doing for free, so I could be like learning and advancing. But I was like, why would they hire me? Like all I did was just buy stuff. So I built some projects, so I'd have some things to talk about to people, and that really led to some great opportunities. I was in USA Today, I think it was, which was cool to be featured in there. And another cool thing there too, I saw this reporter like checking into the media desk, and she looked a little bit lost, and so I just asked her like, hey, how can I help you, like point you to some people you want to interview? And I was just really helpful to her that day. And then later in the day, she's like, hey, I want to interview you. No, you don't want to interview me. There's all these other investors at this thing. You don't want to interview me. She's like, no, I want to interview you. And it's just about Startup Grind, where they talk about giving with no expectation of receiving. And that was what I did for that woman, where I was just helpful to her, and she just felt like, hey, this is a good guy. He's got an interesting story. I guess I want to help him out. And so that, I think, is a good lesson when you just are genuinely interested in people and not looking to get anything out of that relationship, but just want to help people. Good things happen. And there's another one too. Where I got a Wall Street guy. Like I thought he was crazy, but he wanted to interview me, and so I ended up flying out to New York later that year and overlooking the New York Stock Exchange from his whatever 80th story office building, and that was a cool experience too. Man, Bitcoin's been there's so many amazing things that happened. It's really unreal. I ended up going to Singapore in 2014 because of being at the conference in 2013, and I don't know why somebody made a mistake. I got put on this list. I should have been on this list, but it was a ton of venture capitalists and CEOs of companies, and somehow I got invited to speak at this conference in Singapore. Should have been on that list, but got to go out there. Connected with some venture capitalists and things like that, and have stayed in contact with those people over the past 5 years. So all kinds of good things happened for me being in that space. So getting back to your question about 2014, everything was happening that was good, and I love this space, and I wanted to do more in it in 2014.
Cool. So 2015 comes around, and there's this little thing called Startup Grind. Now tell me how Startup Grind all started. And I mean, I think I've told most of you this, but David's the guy who started Startup Grind Lansing in 2015.
Yeah, Startup Grind actually came from Bitcoin. One of the people I met at a different conference, he was the director in Vegas, and he was, I said you should do it. And he was like, hey, do you Startup Grind where you are? I was like, no. He's like, you should make it. So I thought, hey, why not? Let's do it. 2014 and 15 were interesting. So in 2013, the price of Bitcoin like skyrocketed, and I was just making tons of, my wealth was just increasing. 2014 and 15 were the opposite. Bitcoin was dropping. But since I was in love with this thing though, I was putting more. I was buying more. As the price was dropping, I was buying into it. Cause I was excited about it. I was excited about what I thought I could do for the future. And I thought, hey, worst case scenario, I lose money that I'm putting in here. Best case scenario, I help in a little way, Bitcoin be this new technology. But in 2014, I was flying around and speaking at these places and everything, and I was spending a lot of money and a lot of time trying to build these products, and I was just failing, and my investments are going down, and I'm losing money, I'm spending money, everything is not great, and I went negative on the Bitcoin. So when I got into Bitcoin in 2013, it went from like $80 or $90 up to like $1,200. And I'd been doing some other things, with the investing and the arbitrage. And so I had like a 22x return on my investment in like 3 months. And I was like, oh my, this is unreal. This is really substantial. But in 2014, with me putting more money in, I actually went negative. So, I took like, this insane return and took it negative. And so in 2015, I said, hey, I can't just keep, bleeding. I'm out of cash. I need to. I say out of cash, but not out of assets. It's a little bit different. It's not like I was going to be homeless or anything. Like I was going to be fine and had more money than a lot of people for my age. But it doesn't feel good for me to see my bank account drop from having tens of thousands of dollars to having a few $1,000s. Like really bothers me mentally. I talked to a friend about that actually, where it like really bothers me when my wealth is decreasing every month. It really like feels bad for me, and it's something I should probably get over because it doesn't actually impact my life. But that led me to switching out of the Bitcoin space professionally while I was still like really interested in it and getting back to consulting and trying to do products.
So was Startup Grind sort of an effort to like network and bring potential clients together and that sort of thing, or what was the reason for wanting to
for Startup Grind? I've been to these conferences in 2014. I was going to a lot of conferences, meeting all these really like amazing people that wanted to put a dent in the universe. And I didn't know of an event here in Lansing where I would, see those same people. And so I thought, hey, I'll just build this event series and hang out with really cool people, like the people here in this room that are building businesses who I just love feeding off of their energy and talking over ideas with them. And so that's why I wanted to do Startup Grind here.
Yeah. Okay. So how did Startup Grind go? Your first event, you had a bajillion people, and they're like, you need to do this every month, or
Yeah. The first event was pretty good. I was spending money on it. I didn't have a lot of money, so it was like hard for me to focus on it. I think I was like too lazy like in thinking about it. Like I wanted this community to exist, but I didn't like know how to build that community, and I would do things differently now. I think back then I wanted to measure success by the number of people here in the audience, and I think instead of what I should have done was like measured success by what's the value that we're delivering, and like are we meeting the people's needs here, and maybe having like a nucleus of a community. So instead of trying to have like 50 people who came because they're my friend, try to have people who are the type of people that I want to see there and who can help other people, and try to like nurture that nucleus to have it grow. I think in retrospect, I would focus more on the quality over the quantity. One of my friends, Alex Fisher, who spoke here last year, he had an Ethereum meetup, and there were like 4 people there. And he was like, hey, this is great. And I think one of those ended up like being in a contract with him or a business deal or something. So I think he like really like benefited from that. And I benefited from Startup Grind too. But it was a challenge for me to support it financially and with my time while I was starting a business.
Yeah. Okay. So Startup Grind, you ran it for a few years. Turned it over to me in spring 2017. But you went on to work in Detroit, and it was because of someone you met through Startup Grind.
Yep. I ended up working for one of the people I interviewed here. That was one of the great things about Startup Grind. We had amazing speakers in here, and at first it was hard to get speakers, but after we had good track record of success, we could just call into anybody's office and get these people to come and speak. And so I ended up working for this company in Detroit as their CTO, and they were in an accelerator. I'm blanking on the name, Techstars. Techstars, like the second biggest or second best accelerator, in the U.S. and the world, and that was a really cool experience for me to be there. And
Tell us what they did. I mean, it's always interesting to know.
I don't really want to get into the details too much of that company because I wasn't there very long and left, but it was a cool experience. It was definitely a challenge for myself where it was one of those things where like you don't know if you can do it until you're in it. And I think some people shy away from those opportunities, but I feel like those are like the big opportunities for growth. And then it really gave me a great sense after having been there and been like, oh, I know, what this is like, and I don't know what that life was like. I know where my skills are relative to the other people. If you think you could be an Olympian, maybe, but you're not sure, and then somebody invites you to be in the Olympics, I think you should like go be in the Olympics, even if you think you're gonna like fall flat on your face and make a fool out of yourself. Because then you at least know where you stand. And so I think that was really great for me to go there and really give me a sense of like, oh, hey, I could do this if I want to.
Yeah, cool. So after the job at the startup at Techstars, you came back to Lansing, and Bitcoin's doing really well, and you're like, okay, this is great. So then you really became like a full-time investor, right?
Yep.
And tell us about some of your investments.
Yeah. So this was last year. This was 2017, and just everything went crazy. I mean, Bitcoin went up a lot. Like in November or January, it was probably like $900 or something like that. And at the end of the year, it was probably like 15 or 20,000 or something. And just really, crazy to see those kind of returns. And that wasn't even the best. There are these altcoins that performed even better. I mean, everybody in the space is just making these crazy amounts of money. It was really a bizarre experience. I came from a farm town, and I'm a frugal person. I don't like fancy things, but a lot of people, I think, really got into the financial aspect of the coins. I used to say back, when Bitcoin wasn't doing well, when Bitcoin was declining, maybe in 14 and 15, I used to say the best thing for Bitcoin's price is Bitcoin's price. Because I had seen that in 2013, the excitement, the enthusiasm that I thought at the time was for the technology and what Bitcoin could do for the world, because that's what everybody was saying out of their mouth. But when I was in Vegas in 2013, and everybody's so happy, so jubilant about Bitcoin, a year later in 2014, by every metric except for price, Bitcoin is better. We're closer to achieving the vision that everybody talked about in 2013 that they're so excited about, but it was like you were at a funeral. Everybody's so sad because the price was, I don't know, 200 or 400 or something instead of, 1,200. And so that was when I realized, like, the best thing for Bitcoin's price is Bitcoin's price. Not for the technology or for adoption or anything, just for the price. And I think that's what we saw a lot of last year. All of a sudden people are calling me up that I've been talking to about Bitcoin for 5 years, and they're like, hey, how do I get in? And then they want to get into these altcoins, because they're like, oh, hey, Bitcoin's expensive, whatever it is, 10,000 or 15,000 or 5,000. They want to get into the next coin that's like $1, that's going to be like $15,000, tomorrow, as soon as they get in.
Yeah, you just told me about Ravencoin a couple weeks ago, and already we've been doing some stuff with it, and if anyone wants to know how to get into Ravencoin, we've got ways already to do that.
Yeah, there's some miner in here we should talk to you later. But I missed out on a lot of opportunity actually last year. I had my Bitcoin, I had my Ethereum. Oh, I was in the Ethereum crowd sale, we didn't talk about that. But I'd failed in some investments. I put some money into a clothing company and total loss, and I put some money into a coin, Aurora coin, that I was excited about because it had a different distribution mechanism, and I lost all that money. But I was really lucky with Ethereum, and I was in Simple Token and Civic, and I've got this thesis of like investing in really strong founding teams that have had proven success in the past, and so far following that thesis has done really well for me. That's in the coin space, and like these. People look at these coins, like a Ripple or something like that, and they want these coins that have these high returns. where you get high returns is high risk. And when you look at like where to get a lot of risk, it's like when the team is just formed. Like if you and I formed a company tonight and we do an ICO, we're gonna have like our lowest value probably. And that's when people should put their money in if they're looking for something really risky, but they're not really. Like people want to make money on their money. And so I think some people put into really risky things looking for a high return, but end up maybe not doing so well. But for me, you know, I didn't do a lot of ICOs last year. I get hit with them a few times a week, and I'm just really selective about what I put into, and it's worked out well for me.
Cool. Okay, I think we're ready for questions. So if anyone has a question, we'll actually have you come to the side here and see where Shay's sitting. I'll give him the microphone and he can kind of do the question.
We got one brave soul coming up.
Yeah. Hey, my name is John, and you talked a lot about your successes with different investments of coins, Bitcoins. I sit at work, and the past couple of months, two of my coworkers have been eyeing it every 5 minutes, and I've seen it gone from 9,000 to 12,000 to 7,000 to you name it. What is your approach right now with all the volatility? Are you in? Are you out? Do you half and half?
I love the volatility. That's the whole reason I got in at the beginning. So you know, sometimes people ask me like, oh, you know, what about the security of it, or what about this? If all the problems in Bitcoin were worked out, then it would be a very stable asset. It might grow like, you know, something relative to like the proportion of people on Earth or something like that. It's a high risk, high reward asset. So I think if people are putting into crypto, they should be prepared for big ups and big downs. I feel like there's a lot of like luck factor. Like, you know, some of my friends, they bought in before it had a big up, and so they feel like really good about it. But, you know, one of my friends, they bought Bitcoin at 20,000, like at the peak, and it's like half of that now, and they feel awful, and they can't wait till it gets to 20K again to get out. But it might never get to 20K again. It might go to zero, and then they'll lose out. And I think you've got to like think within yourself. I had a similar problem back in 2013. You know, I put some money into Bitcoin, put like $10,000 in, and a few months later, it's worth like $220,000. You know, $10,000 to $220,000 in like 3.5 months. That was a lot of money for me, and it made me really stress about it. Really think like, hey, this thing just went up so much. It's probably going to go down, and so maybe I should sell my position here. But when I got into Bitcoin, I said, hey, I'm looking for either a 0x return, so like I'm going to lose all my money, or a 100x return in the next 5 years. And so when I had the 22x, I was like, hey, I'm not at that 100. I could lose this $220,000 that I just made in a few months, and I'll be back to where I was a few months ago, and you know, no big deal. I mean, it's a couple $100,000, kind of a big deal, but not a huge deal. What if on the flip, I sell, and then next month it goes to $1 million, and I get that 100x that I was looking for, except I sold out, so now I missed that. I'm gonna feel awful. I'm gonna feel like the stupidest person where I like had the plan, had the good plan, was executing on plan, and then sold out and lost it. Or it didn't hit my goal because I sold and like didn't hold true to the plan. And so I made the decision one night. I was at a poker tournament actually, and I made the decision like, nope, I'm just gonna keep it, and I felt great. Bitcoin dropped from like 1,200 down to like 500, down to like 300, down to like 150, and I felt great. I kept buying, which was like stupid, but I felt great because I like made that decision, and I knew like what the goal was, and I was good with it ending. But if I would have been in a different position, you know, maybe my goal wouldn't have been to 100x my money. Maybe it would have been to, you know, pay off my student loans or pay off a car loan or something like that. And so I think when you think about that volatility, I think it's good to like think about like what could happen in the good case and what am I looking for, and what could happen in the bad case, and how am I going to feel in those two, and to think about that for yourself.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Drew, and I see your side on the risk and reward, but Do you think that Bitcoin has hit a peak now, or is there a way to get this into an everyday market, or is it kind of stuck?
I feel the same way about Bitcoin today. Not the same. I feel a little bit worse about Bitcoin now in 2018 than I did in 2013 when I invested in Bitcoin. When I invested in Bitcoin in 2013, I was thinking like, the market cap at the time was probably about $1 billion or so. And I was thinking like, what's my potential return? I want a 100x return. Is that reasonable? Can Bitcoin go from $1 billion market cap to a $100 billion market cap? And I was trying to figure out like how should I think about this and like could that happen? And so I started thinking about like other assets. And one of the assets that I thought about was gold. Gold now and at the time was probably around $8 trillion market cap. And I was thinking like, and the other one that I was thinking about was like Bitcoin claims to be a currency. So I was like, what if Bitcoin becomes the reserve currency of the world? What if Bitcoin becomes the gold of the world? I was thinking about those kind of things to think about like, what's the maximum value Bitcoin could reach?
So for it to become like a world currency, like you're saying, is it not illegal right now, or is there a way for would all the countries have to come together to make sure that it could become a world currency, or how could that even happen?
How could that happen? That's a complex question. But let me go back to the market cap thing. So back then Bitcoin was at $1 billion. Today it's I think around 170 billion or $200 billion market cap. I look at the market cap, not so much the price, because like the price of a unit can be really depend on a lot of factors. And so the market cap is I think the thing that people should really look at. But I think a lot of people don't. They look at the price of a unit. And so I told you that I feel about Bitcoin the same way now that I did in 2013, where I think it's better than gold. And so gold's at 8 trillion. I feel like Bitcoin has the potential to go higher than 8 trillion. Today it's at 170 billion. So that's maybe 40x higher than where it is today if it was to achieve 8 trillion in value. To your question about is it illegal, how the governments come together, the governments aren't going to want to come together, in my opinion, I don't think, and say like, hey, we want Bitcoin to be the reserve currency of the world. Governments get a lot of power from being able to print money and control the monetary policy in their countries, and if that's taken away from them, that could cause some serious problems. I think it was in 1933 the U.S. banned gold here for that reason, because people wanted to transact in gold, and the government's like, no, you need to transact in dollars. And I think we'll actually, unfortunately, I think we'll see some bloodshed, where some countries, the population wants to use Bitcoin, the government outlaws it, and people says, no, we're going to use it anyways to protect their wealth.
So it will kind of stay illegal, or at least the foreseeable future.
Well, no, it's not illegal here in the U.S. It's not. Maybe in North Korea or something. I don't know. Maybe in like 3 countries or something like that.
Bali's not a big fan.
Where is it?
Bali.
Yeah. But it's absolutely legal here in the U.S. and you can buy it like at Coinbase.com today. There's no problem with that.
But you have to pay taxes on it.
You do have to pay tax on your gains. Yeah. A lot of people, they're first-time investors. If you invest in the stock market, if you buy Apple at $10 and it goes to $100, you owe taxes on $90, and Bitcoin works the same way. You have to pay your taxes on gains. When you sell.
Hello. Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. I'm not a tech person, but I guess I'm more curious. You were talking about in 2014 how the mood changed, how people were looking at the currency like despondently. I guess my question is, it's like, seems like the mining process is like tremendously wasteful, and there's just a number of downsides to it. So it's like, is there some ethos behind it that appeals to you aside from the monetary thing?
For Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like a lot of it. Freedom is very important to me, and all throughout my life. I talked about when I was in high school that I couldn't wait to have my own apartment with my best friend from high school. And really, it's about freedom. It's not my parents were great, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a ton of freedom at home. I had no bills. I know anything, that I just could hang out with friends on the weekend. But you know, I couldn't stay up till 2 a.m. if I wanted to. You know, it's like, oh, I gotta be in bed. And so all throughout my life, I've wanted, you know, more and more freedom. And like the internet, Bitcoin, I feel like is such an empowering technology. And I think it's going to do so much for the world, you know, particularly in poor countries. You know, we were talking before about, you know, countries, you know, outlawing Bitcoin, and they have these really bad monetary policies that you know, just destroy people's wealth and make it hard for them to live. I don't know how they live. And Bitcoin, you know, is an alternative, is a way for them to escape that. It's a way for people in these poorer countries to, you know, transact with U.S. customers and access whole new markets. So I'm excited about like all kinds of things about Bitcoin and really in, you know, making the world a better place, making it a freer place, giving people more options, more power. In the same way that the internet has empowered people, I'm excited about, you know, Bitcoin really empowering people with financial power, where the internet, you know, gave people communication power.
Oh, thank you.
We can ask one more question.
Hello. 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 My question is about mining. You weren't very interested in it previously, and the mining going on by big organizations, and in particular cloud mining. I saw that Super Cryptocurrency today announced that you could pre-sign up for cloud mining of different kinds of coins, etc. What's your thought on large-scale mining? I know China has shut down mining recently, and on cloud mining in particular. Is it worthwhile to, you know, pre-sign up to get a spot to cloud mine, for instance, with Super Cryptocurrency?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I do have a bias against mining. I looked into it a whole bunch. There used to be these mining calculators that I would look at. One of the complicated things about mining is you're speculating on the price of Bitcoin. You're also speculating on the mining difficulty. So if you buy a mining rig today that makes you like $1 a day, and the difficulty of Bitcoin goes up, tomorrow you're going to make, you know, less than $1 a day, and then a month later and a year later, you're making less and less. And you've also got the power rates to take into account, and then you're competing there. So like one of my friends has a huge mining operation in Washington State where he gets like hydroelectric power at like 2 cents a kilowatt hour. For me at my house, it's like 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So he's got like a 6x cost advantage on me. Which, to your question about cloud mining, they got me kind of excited about cloud mining a couple of years ago, where I was like, oh, if I invest in this cloud mining, and then they got the economies of scale, then I can take advantage of mining there. Unfortunately, back then there were like a ton of scams in the cloud mining space where, you know, they would run as not real mining operations. These things called Ponzi schemes, where they take your money, they pay other investors with your money, but they're not actually doing anything. And so I've really not paid much attention to that space, honestly, and just, you know, stayed away from mining.
Okay, thank you.
One last one. We don't have to.
I was told this was a fireside chat, and I was wondering where the fireplace was.
Okay, I already controlled him on mine though.
He was supposed to bring a flamethrower. We were gonna
Yeah.
we're in East Lansing. We were gonna get some couches up here with a flamethrower and make it a fireside chat. But it didn't happen.
So I was wondering. So it takes. Correct me if I'm wrong. 300, give or take, minutes to process a Bitcoin transaction. Right. That's what I read on the internet. So it's got to be true. So is that? I mean, I know it takes a long time to process a transaction. Is that correct? Do you see that as being, you know, a viable currency, actually, you know, or do you see something like Litecoin that takes less time pushing ahead and becoming the currency?
Yeah. So I'll go back to when I got into Bitcoin in 2013. You know, I was excited about, you know, fast, free, instant. So that's what I think about when digital. You know, if you got like email, but it takes like slower than the mail, or it takes 2 hours to send or something, like that's stupid in my mind, and it's like, oh, that sucks. The question on like how long does a Bitcoin transaction take to process is kind of complicated. And really what you're talking about is settlement. See, like today, if I go to McDonald's and I swipe my credit card there, it looks like I just paid for that instantly. And I don't actually know how McDonald's works, but let's just say McDonald's doesn't get paid for like 30 days, right? The credit card company definitely pays them later. They don't pay them that same day that I swipe my credit card. And things might be faster, but it used to be that it would take 30 days for that thing to actually settle. So in reality, like I didn't pay them for like 30 days. And then there's also like the dispute process where they can dispute it. But it seems like it was instant to me. So in Bitcoin in 2013, when I did a transaction, if I sent money to Phil, it was like it was instant. It was like if I sent money, he would see it, boom, received right now. And there's no, 60-minute delay or 30-minute delay or anything like that. And honestly, since Bitcoin has gotten slower and expensive, which is really just sad that we're like 5 years later and this thing is slower and expensive all later this year. I think it's going to be really fast again. So I haven't done a Bitcoin transaction in a while. I did hear that this one change they made last year called SegWit, I think, had this replacement by fee thing in there that I think makes it take like 30 minutes before you're like good on the money. But I'm not sure. It's like hard to tell since I like didn't actually do it. Is it still like instant-ish or does it actually take like 30 minutes? So I'm not sure to your point, but I'm certain in the future digital currencies will be, instantaneous looking.
Even today, like I did one a few weeks ago, and it like appeared immediately, 5 seconds. But it didn't actually like get confirmed across the network. I mean, like it wasn't like set in stone. Okay, one last question for you. How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as somebody who was helpful. I really love helping people. It makes me feel good if I'm able to just help somebody solve a problem or challenge in their life.
Cool. Okay, so
I have a quick question too. If you sell all of your Bitcoins today, how many dollar bills will you end up getting?
How many what?
How many dollar bills you will end up getting?
How many dollar bills? Oh man, that'd be a lot of dollars.
Make it a guess.
My favorite meme on the internet is one where it's like Morpheus. Neo's asking Morpheus from the Matrix. He's like, man, when am I going to sell my Bitcoin for millions? And Morpheus's answer is like, when the time is right, you won't have to. So what I really like to see is like, my mortgage company takes Bitcoin, McDonald's takes Bitcoin, everywhere just takes Bitcoin, and I don't need to sell my Bitcoin except maybe when I pay taxes.
Thanks for dodging the question.
Okay, so we have a gift here for Dave. And I mentioned earlier that we bought this Bitcoin miner, okay? And it was like this little computer. And the Bitcoin miner today, if you plugged it in and started using it, would make you 22 cents. But it would also cost you $1.50 per day in electricity. So you're like $1.38 or something, or 28 that you're losing every day if you used it. So a few weeks ago, Dave's like, "Can you still have that thing?" I'm like, "Yeah, but we can sell it for $10 on eBay if we wanted, but that's about it." So I have souped it up and made it into something a little different than what it was originally intended. All right, so we have a little plaque on here. It says Startup Grind, David Smith, Chapter Director, 2015 to 2017. Honored guest, January 2018. And put some lights on it, case around it. And here you go. Here's the Bitcoin miner we bought. Thank you all for coming.
Whoa! Phil, that means a lot to me, man.
I forgot.
You guys know, I just moved recently. I have so much like Bitcoin magazines, all this Bitcoin stuff. Bitcoin has been so, win, lose, or draw. If I lose all my, if I can turn it into $0, at some point in the future, because I lose it all. Bitcoin has done so much for my life that it's just really special for me just to have been in a part of that, and to have things like this is just going to always be really special for me. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.